back to the law of restoration for Lodium Morris Trading, Monte, Colorado. And we're on Article 3, Qazi, which has to do with the Darul Abdul, which is the Sharifian authority over the judicial branch. And the Qazi are the judges. The head Qazi is the chief judge. 1, the provincial divan is as expressed in this, the law of restoration shall include 3 branches of governance. Herein shall be covered the judicial branch. The judicial power of the provincial government shall be vested in one supreme court, hereafter known as the Darul Abdul, with authority herein given to establish no more than 12 district Darul Abduls as population and demand require. Each district Darul Abdul shall be overseen by a Qazi Darul Abdul Justice. As a new district Darul Abdul is established, a new Qazi is added to oversee its function. Initially, there shall only be 3 Qazi authorized to oversee and administer the Darul Abdul and as needed for 3 district Darul Abduls serving the landed regions corporately known as Denver, Colorado Springs, and Grand Junction. No inferior courts or administrative tribunals are authorized. There shall be 3 Qazi to serve as judicial officers overseeing civil actions, criminal actions, family actions, consular actions, contract arbitration, estate disposition cases, and other procedural actions as required. So that covers everything, you see. So our courts are in place to cover whatever the issue is, our courts are in place to cover that. So when people say, well, do you have consular court? As though it's a separate entity. That our courts handle consular actions, but it's not, and it's a consular court when it's handling consular actions. It's a family court when handling a family action. It's a criminal court when it's handling criminal actions. It's a civil court when handling civil actions. Okay, so we don't have to have separate administrative things for consular court. Consular court has been made to be a separate government in itself, and that's incorrect government. And what it does is that it puts governance only in that venue, in that arena, whereas governance encompasses so much more. Okay, number 3, the Qazi, judicial branch member, shall be constrained from using the office for personal gain, exercising undue influence, influence peddling, receiving emolument from a foreign power, receiving bribes, appointing officers not approved by the Dalil Aziz, ruling against the Constitution, and requiring personal oaths of allegiance. Now, this is quoted in each of the branches, and it is the constraints that are on that particular branch, whether it be executive, whether it be legislative, whether it be judicial. This is for the protection of the government, so that we are acting in a way that is in alignment with our principles. So we're not going to leave a door open, no hanging chads over here, you see. We're not going to leave a door open for people to do things that are contrary to our government without there being recourse. We've seen for instance, we had a vice presidential candidate that was from Alaska who, in her cabinet, she had them all sign an oath and allegiance to her personally.
Did she?
Yes.
Wow.
Which meant that their jobs were to do her bidding, not necessarily bidding what was best for the people.
Was that Sarah Palin?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. And you know, evidently in that state government, they hadn't covered that. They didn't have anything to protect themselves from that. Influence peddling. We see influence peddling going on. That's the whole thing around lobbyists. Lobbyists is influence peddling. They come into a senator or congressman's office with a briefcase full of money, or with a check, and say, we need this legislation to go through. Here's the legislation, and if you approve this, you know, here's a check. If you approve it, we'll have another one for twice that amount. I mean, that's how they do it. It's basically bribe, but it's called lobbying.
Yes.
And it's legal, but legal is not lawful. It's not in law. There's many crimes that take place under the auspices of legal. Okay, 4, the requirements for being elected to the Darul Abdul shall be: the candidate must be at least 45 years old, the candidate must be a national for at least 6 years, the candidate must have demonstrated appreciation for Moorish science and culture, Moorish chronology, national civics, as well as the well-being of the people. The candidate must have lived within the provincial dominions for a minimum of 3 consecutive years. The candidate cannot be of subject status within any imperial provincial government. Okay, so these are the requirements. Now, this last one, the candidate cannot be of subject status within any imperial provincial government. That's in place so that, because we may have situations where if there's treaties with other provincial governments, those relationships may allow for people to be nationals or subjects within both of those provincial governments, with certain conditions and constraints and under certain parameters. If that's the case, this would apply to them as well, you see. Because in that case, what's it called? Extraterritorial jurisdiction would come into play. So the law of our land would be preeminent in relationship to our governance.
So they would have to give up one or
If they wanted,
whatever.
yeah, well, as a subject, they couldn't serve, you see. If under a treaty relationship, they could be aligned with both provincial governments, that wouldn't give them, wouldn't provide them authority to serve in our government, you see. Number 5, elections.
Can you expand on that a little bit, brother, so people can have a really good understanding of why the subject can't serve?
The subject cannot serve because you have to go back to the preamble. Let's go back to the preamble. The preamble states very clearly, we the Moors of Morocco, the mothers and sons in northwestern Mexico, northwest Africa, North America, and standing on our 5 points of light, love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, in order to restore a balanced order, just protections, reciprocal wealth, and cultural integrity for ourselves and our just sanguine heirs, do establish this law of restoration for Lodium Moors Pradium ante Colorado. Now, when we talk about the Moors of Morocco, mothers and sons, we know that the lineage is through the mothers, and that everything that we've expressed for ourselves and our just sanguine heirs, our heirs by blood. Okay, so when we talk about subjects, the subjects are aligned with us and affiliated with us through the father's DNA. Okay, they have Moorish DNA in them, and so what we want to do is what we're doing is we are, how should I say, facilitating within the government the continuity of the bloodline, so that the government is perpetually serving Moors by Moors. It doesn't mean subjects cannot serve, they just cannot serve as officers, elected or appointed officers. Okay, now they can serve in adjunct capacities. For instance, a person who's a subject can serve as a deputy consul Okay, in that capacity, they could serve as a deputy sheriff. They could serve as an administrative assistant or administrative clerk for the Razim. You see, they can be involved at those levels. They could even be involved with an elders council. You see, that kind of thing, but not as elected or appointed officials.
Right.
You see,
And why is that, brother?
it's to maintain the cultural and consanguine continuity of the nation, so that we're not how do I put it? We're not weakening our stance. Because if we leave it wide open, we could wind up with a government of
Full of-
subjects,
Yes.
and those subjects can be compromised by their mothers. You see,
And this is all about restoration. And it's
Restoration.
restoration of the nation,
mm-hmm,
restoration of the empire.
yes,
And it's the Moorish, the autochthonous Aboriginal peoples of the land.
yes. Number 5, elections for the Qazi, Darul Abdul justices shall take place 7 Shaban 1442, also March 21st of each 20th year, starting with the year 2021, 2029, 2035. There shall initially be 3 Qazi, Darul Abdul justices, one of which is elected to an 8-year term, and one elected to a 14-year term, and one elected to a 20-year term. Thus, the Qazi, Darul Abdul justices have a staggered election protocol. Every 20 years, one Qazi is elected, beginning 2021, 2029, 2035. Oath taking for the Qazi shall be on the 19th Ramadan, 1442, or May 1st of the same year. The Darul Abdul members may serve consecutive terms of office, and they may only serve in the same office for 2 terms in one lifetime. Now, we bring up the oath in this article on the Qazi because the Qazi is the one who administers the oath. That's, if the oath is administered for any office, the Qazi administers it. At our inauguration, we had the Sayyaraha administer the oath to the Qazi. And in order for the Sayyaraha to do that, the entire body had to administer the oath upon the Sayyaraha. That was a one-time event. It actually worked out really well.
Yeah.
It came off good. And so that was one time to initiate the process. So any oaths hereafter are always administered by the head Qazi, the chief judge. Number 6, in the event the office of the head Qazi is vacated either by resignation, impeachment, incapacity, or death, the following protocols shall apply. In the case of resignation and impeachment, the head Qazi shall have 30 days to finalize any and all pending matters requiring their attention. The 30-day period can be reduced to immediate dismissal with approval by the Wazir al-Reis and Sayyaraha. A new head Qazi shall be chosen by the remaining Qazi after a new Qazi is chosen. After a new Qazi is chosen with the Wazir al-Reis and Dalil al-Aziz's approval to fill the term of the vacating Qazi. In the case of death or incapacity, terminal illness, physically debilitating condition, or mental incapacity, a new Qazi is chosen to fill the remaining term of the vacated Qazi with the approval of the Wazir al-Reis and Sayyaraha, and subsequently the new body of the Qazi will choose a head Qazi. Now, in the case, for instance, we can all see, if you've been watching Joe Biden recently, he's losing his mental capacity. He's becoming senile in public. And so it's very soon that they could say, you're losing capacity, you're not able to make decisions, you're incoherent, blah, 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 blah. And they could just initiate a removal based on those grounds. If they were in our government, they can do it within theirs, of course. But that's a very important issue, because if someone is in a capacity, and they're senile or experiencing first stage Alzheimer's, then they have to go, because they can't serve. They can be served, they need to be served. Okay, 7, nationals holding offices in our nation must be under oath to uphold, support, and reflect the law of restoration for Lord and Moorish Parade in Monte Colorado by working unwaveringly to assure that all laws, principles, and decisions are carried out for the good of the people. This oath shall be administered by the head Qazi. When the oath is for the head Qazi, the Sayyaraha shall administer the oath. Now, if it has to be done a second time by the Sayyaraha, that means there's been a blanket changeover. Something's happened where something drastic has happened. But this only had to happen one time, and that was at the beginning. Okay. And in the note it says, Judicial Branch protocols for reviewing bills to assure conformity with constitutional standards, protocols for choosing judiciary, qualifications of holding judicial office. So we pretty much covered that.